A man went into the woods once a week. His wife decided to follow him. After that, she was never the same.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
Russia is the largest country on Earth. Within its massive limits, there are more things going on than one can even start to grasp. Many goings-on are bad, while some are good, and almost many of its citizens are completely unaware of. This story that we're introducing to you in this video comes from there, and we're sure that a few of its people might recognize it. In a small Russian town not far from the southwestern city of Kazan called Makarovka, a common humble family lived. The husband was a perfect family man. In fact, he'd never been in trouble, didn't hang out with any eyebrow-raising folks, and didn't even like alcohol. The wife was a housewife who respected her home, and they had 2 children together. The wife was beautiful on both the inside and the outside, as she would always go out of her way to help those in need. She was greatly admired by the locals for her values, and perhaps that dutifulness to protecting people brought her to her husband, who was a Kazan police officer. But even despite the fact that his job required him to be strict and sometimes harsh, he never raised his voice in front of his wife, not even once. He would wake up early in the mornings to commute to work in Kazan, about 25 kilometers away. Everything was going great until the wife started noticing her husband spend his days off heading into the woods in the early morning for a bit. No explanations, nothing. Why did he suddenly start doing it? He didn't carry anything with him or back, so she was wondering what was going on. I saw him leaving, and when he came back, I asked him why he went in the woods. He just said he had something to do and that I had nothing to worry about, so I trusted him. But I became uneasy when it became a several weekend thing, and then regular. One day, when speaking to one of her friends, she unloaded the woods situation with her husband. Her friend suggested that she should follow him to figure out what he was doing, that he was probably cheating on her. When her friend said this, she didn't believe it for a second. Her husband was a wonderful man. She couldn't even imagine him doing something like that. So she decided to prove her wrong and follow him, waiting for his next day off. The day finally came, and she saw her husband wake up early in the morning and get ready. As she was having breakfast with her kids, her husband walked in and said he'd skip on eating and just head into the woods. She nodded and told him she'd wait. She heard the door close and remembered her friend's words. She told her children to wait there and that she'd be back soon, and she followed her husband into the forest. She watched him head deeper and deeper into the woods, making small advances so he wouldn't notice. She was anxiously anticipating something happening. Maybe a mistress would come out of the underbrush and meet him here so he would cheat on her? Or maybe something worse. But nothing happened. The man went further and further into the forest, suddenly freezing in the middle of nowhere. His wife was about to find out what he did every weekend. Her husband stood there for a while until he suddenly looked up at the sky and started screaming into the treetops. It was a wild, animalistic scream that continued for nearly 10 minutes. He didn't say any words, no curses, just screaming. The wife couldn't understand why he was screaming. Had he gone insane? Her husband stopped and looked back down. He looked like he was about ready to head back, so she quickly hurried back home before he'd notice her. He soon came back with a bouquet of flowers he bought on the way, hugging his wife tightly. But she was still confused and wondering why he did that. Her patience eventually ran out, and she decided to ask him. One day, as he came back from work, she told him that she'd followed him. She told him that it seemed so strange that he suddenly started going to the woods, so she admitted she'd doubts about his faith and watched him scream. He was taken aback and gazed out the window for a moment. He didn't raise his voice or lay a hand on her. Of course she was suspicious, since he didn't tell her anything. Then he confessed. The yelling freed him from all the negativity he picked up from work, from having to see so much of the criminal world. It was the only way he found to vent the anger and pain he felt when seeing so much darkness. He said he felt comfortable doing it rather than taking it out on her or the children. As soon as those words left his mouth, his wife just hugged him and regretted not just asking him in the first place and for distrusting him. This story made its rounds before social media was really a thing in Russia. In fact, the story was originally published by a woman called Daria Petrova, who claimed that this story was her own. Since the events of the story happened, she wanted to share her experience since it changed her. There was no more distrust in the family, and more than anything, it was important to share ways to vent without hurting anyone or continuing the cycle of pain. So when you feel overwhelmed, talk to your family. Find ways to vent that help you. If you need to, go find a forest and scream. Venting is always better than taking it out on someone else. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your way of venting stress is. Then make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our latest uploads.